Welcome back to Mr. Dunn's art channel. So, you are here to do the texture project, and our texture project is a lot of fun. People love doing it. So, let's get started. It starts back in time in 1515. Ooh, it's a pretty long time ago. In Europe, when a guy drew this rhinoceros based solely on a description. Alright? And he came up with all these different textures on there. And so it came out strange, and there's some inaccuracies, like a horn up here, you know. But he'd never seen one before. Well, we're going to do texture, and that's going to come out things like this. You see that? So now, create your own rhinoceros with your own texture. All kinds of patterns in there, weaving texture. So what is texture? Right? Texture, lesson number 1. Texture is an object, how an object feels to the touch. So if you touch it, how does it feel? But in the art room, we have 2 types of textures, visual texture and actual texture. So actual texture is the one you can feel and touch. Smooth paper, in ceramics we use it a lot, right, for how things feel. You can, it's really important to put a lot of texture in our ceramics because it's actual texture. But here we do visual texture, what I just showed you there, what it looks like it feels like. Looks smooth, it looks rough, it looks weaved, it looks bumpy, right? It looks pokey. And so you're trying to create that look, you can almost sense it just by seeing it. Okay? Draw texture. Texture is visual, we talked about that. So how many textures can you think of? You have an example? My daughter's over here. Alright, so here's a list of them. Quite a few. What does a brick feel like? Or a stone? Or grainy wood? Tree bark, that's rough, huh? Metal, shiny steel, glass, really smooth, rubber, plastic, shag carpet, marble, sandpaper, reptile scales, fish scales, tiger fur, giraffe fur, rabbit fur, really soft, alligator skin, there's one, snail shell, snail skin, slime, ooh, that's weird texture, hair, peanut, a peanut, maybe the shell of a peanut, oh, peanut shell, gum, squishy, right, a diamond, cloth, fabric, or bone. I mean, just all these different things have their own unique texture. Many of them you could probably just feel without seeing with your eyes closed and would be able to identify what that is. Others might be harder than that. Alright, so we're going to try to create those visual textures on our art projects. Alright, I showed you those 2 dinosaurs. So let me show you some textures you're going to be able to use. So, I don't know, if you go online and search up textures, you may find things like this. Oh, that's upside down, right? Shapes repeated in nature. So all kinds of things that you can repeat there and look at. And you'll be able to use pretty much any of these because we're not doing perfect patterns, we're doing textures, which means you can do these things like the bark, right? It's not perfectly repeated, the squibbly thing. It's not perfectly repeated, but it creates this feel, this texture, right? And you'll also find stuff like this online. And this is really good for what we're going to do because you're going to want areas that are dark and areas that are light. Little polka dots, a lot of white, a lot of dark, right? You're going to want some contrast next to each other like that. So you create contrast in your work. Swirls and interlocking shapes are cool. From that kind of stuff, doodles. There's another one's got all kinds. Repeat those out on your inside your shapes. All right, all kinds of ideas there. And these are all very unique ones. These are more standard, you know, repeating circles and swirls and things. So this is what I usually have in class for kids to use. So here's what you're going to do. I did want to put these in here just a second. I'll submit those. Alright. You're going to get a picture you like. And you're going to trace it with straight lines. So a turtle shell is probably rounded. So you're going to make it straight, 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 straight. A bunch of straight lines, the fin, straight. Go around the whole thing. And then divide up the areas Like of the fin, they broke it into two pieces there, the belly, the face they cut in half, right? This whole fin, they put one breakup point. So then you're gonna have all these different shapes, and you do want some shapes that are bigger and some shapes that are smaller. And then, so for variety. And then you're gonna fill those up with different kinds of tattoos and patterns, okay? So that would look like this in the end. And it is kind of critical that you use the thick Sharpie on all those lines that you separated, and then you use the thin Sharpie for your different patterns in there. Now this one's been cut up into too many little square shapes, not squares, but shapes. So now it's very hard to put a pattern or a tattoo in there that you can really see. The bigger ones, this is nice, you can see this stuff. The smaller ones in here, it just becomes too dark and blobby. Alright, so like here's this frog. You see that? Am I still in? Yep. And they broke it all up into some different shapes, big and small, and then they filled it up with the different patterns. Wiggly line patterns, triangles, solid squares. So, this one is the same, but here's every other one's colored, so you get this contrast. So it's nice to have the dark against the light, against the dark, against the light, right? And you get contrast areas. So if you find it's too washed, too white, you may need to fill in some patterns in there, solid some things up, and then it looks better, right? Here's a cool one, bunch of penguins having a little party. So they outlined it all, traced in pencil. So you can print something off the internet, put it under your paper, trace it on your window or wherever, and then break it up into the shapes, geometric shapes. So trying to be straight lined about it. If you need to really curve something to help keep the identification of what it is you're doing better, you can do that. But inside, definitely use straight lines. Okay. Oh, I wanted to show you. So here's what it looks like if you use maybe a ballpoint pen, because you don't have a Sharpie. It works. It's not as dark and as sharp as the Sharpie. And got the wood shape, the line patterns, the shape patterns, the solid areas. Could use more solid areas, right? It's not enough. It's all very white. Even though there's a lot of patterns there. But as soon as you do that to it, and that, it creates contrast. And here's what it looks like if you do everything in thick Sharpie, except for this part. So that's all thick Sharpie. So now, and all, there's no white areas really, except maybe here. There's way too many areas that are colored in solid, and it's all with thick Sharpie. So it confuses between what is a shape and what is part of in the lines separating the shapes, right? So it's all lost in here. We lose the face and everything. So it's really critical that you do the thick areas, the separation line with a thick Sharpie and the inside with a thin Sharpie or ballpoint pen. So I hope you have access to that at home. All right, so let me quickly look at some of these. Here's a bear. That's cool. All right, here's I think kind of a cartoony looking panda. He might have too many small shapes. It's getting too complicated. That looks cool. Do you have to use black? No. That looks totally cool. Same process. Well, the separation lines are black, and then the patterns are red, and they got the sharp areas that are thicker, and just more lines makes it darker. Fewer lines makes it lighter. So it comes out cool. Here's another one broken up. So this one's almost kind of hiding it the way it's broken up. A little bit harder to see the picture. There's a wolf running through the snow maybe. Here's a butterfly. That's on computer paper. It might be what you end up having to do it on at home. You don't have any art paper. Could have some more areas colored in. Too much white. Here it is all in thick Sharpie again. Just feels a little blobby. Oh. Here's a bird. Need some dark areas, right? It's all thin Sharpied and there's nothing in colored solid. Hey, that's fun. If you have a set of Sharpies, you can do each area a different color. So that makes it more dynamic. There's some crazy cartoon character someone did, and then filled it in with color. Back to the beginning, okay? Whew. right, so what are you doing? You're choosing a drawing that you like the best, an animal. You're breaking it up into geometric shapes, and tracing it all around a pencil. Then you're going to break it up into shapes in pencil and with maybe a ruler. And then you can go over it all with a thick Sharpie. And then on the inside of all those shapes, you're using thin Sharpie, okay? You're looking for contrast. Remember to go online and look at some of these patterns and designs, because this will help you a lot. And so you don't just repeat circles, squares, and triangles over and over. Every square should have a different pattern or something in it. And that's it. Go for it. Have a good time. Bye. See you next time.